And welcome back to the One Piece Deep Dive. So, with our first story arc complete, how well does the story follow up from its fast-paced opening? Our next story arc opens with Luffy and Zoro at sea, lost and starving. Luffy has already been established as someone with little to no understanding of sailing, but now we also learn that Zoro also lacks any sense of direction, with Zoro having left his home village to hunt someone and just could never find his way back. So it becomes clear that neither of the two have the skills to survive out in sea, and they begin to list what essentials the crew will need: a navigator, a cook, and in Luffy's mind, a musician. As the duo drift aimlessly, they spot a bird in the sky that Luffy rockets up to, only to find that the bird's a bit larger than expected, and Zoro chases down the captured Luffy. Not even having time to save three men stranded at sea, instead running them over and telling them to grab on. When the men don't take kindly to that and try to intimidate Zoro by revealing they're pirates, they politely work it out after some convincing. They share how they were left out to sea after being tricked by a lone girl they found after raiding a merchant ship. She had offered them the treasure she had in exchange for water, but when the pirates actually check the chest on board, she steals their boat and sends them right into the line of a storm, sailing off with the treasure they stole. The pirates are obviously still mad about losing their boat, but all Zoro seems to take away is how she'd make a good navigator with that kind of knowledge. And this is the first time we see Nami, though she hasn't been named yet, and in flashback form, making her introduction much different compared to the other four main characters we meet in the first saga. Unlike them all, Nami is introduced indirectly, and while she still plays a prominent role in this arc, the meat of her story is something Oda holds on to until the near end of East Blue. She's the only character whose backstory isn't revealed in her introductory arc, and as we'll soon see, she's the only crew member who doesn't officially join the crew in her introductory arc, only keeping things in a state of alliance. We properly meet Nami nearby the docks of the town, running from a group of pirates whom she stole a map from. A map to the Grand Line. Off on the rooftops, more pirates, answering to a Captain Buggy, shoot down the bird that Luffy was being kidnapped by. For fun, I guess. Luffy is shot down directly in the middle of Nami and the pirates after her. Nami, never missing an opportunity to divert the pressure, lies about Luffy being her boss, directing their attention on him before dashing off. One of them swipes at Luffy's hat, to which Luffy responds quickly and violently. And once he's finished with them, Nami calls out from the roof, introducing herself as a thief who specializes in stealing from pirates, and offers to join forces with Luffy, to which Luffy refuses. As he walks away, Nami follows him, prodding questions about that hat he's so protective of. We cut to our first introduction of Buggy as he interrogates the crew member who let Nami escape with their map. But the interrogation is derailed after Buggy mishears him and thinks he's insulting his clown-like nose. And for what it's worth for the early translation, they get the initial pun to work well. Not so much the second one. Buggy hoists up the misunderstood crew member, and we learn through the other pirates that this is done through the power of a devil fruit. And we get a full shot of Buggy and his troop behind the explosive execution. As far as introductions go, like Morgan, I think this scene does a great job in immediately telling you what this character will be like. More goofy and comedic than the last one, but no less deadly. Luffy and Nami hide out in one of the houses as Nami explains that most of the townsfolk have fled due to Buggy's attacks, with Buggy infamously having a propensity for explosives and a short temper. We also learn a little more of Nami's motivations, that she plans on buying an island once she collects 1 million berries, with her plan being to head out to the Grand Line to make that fortune. When Luffy discovers Nami is a skilled navigator, the two almost team up, but when Nami finds out that Luffy's a pirate, now she becomes the one to refuse, making a big deal out of her distaste for pirates and her love of money and tangerines, or oranges depending on the translation. Bit of an odd thing to reveal in a rage, but then again it gets the character exposition out quick. Though she does find a use for Luffy's obliviousness, tricking him into being hogtied and given to the Buggy pirates as a way for her to get in. Her act works as she integrates herself into the crew, where we also get our first look at Nami's alcohol tolerance, able to outdrink most of Buggy's men. All the while, Luffy seems more sad that he can't join in the partying than having been betrayed. During the festivities, the Buggy pirates load up a Buggy Ball, one of Buggy's aforementioned explosives, and launches it at the abandoned buildings. And honestly, This might be one of the biggest showings of raw power in the East Blue, as it wipes out a whole row of buildings in the town. We do see larger and larger displays of force later in the series, but in these first 100 chapters, I struggle to think of an attack or weapon that can do as much devastation so quickly. Well, there is one more feat, but it took me a surprising amount of time to really think it over. And taking into account the multiple cannons on Buggy's ship, yeah, it's actually kind of easy to see why this clown would be one of the biggest threats in the East Blue. The Buggy pirates then load up a second Buggy ball, this time aiming it towards the cage that Luffy is in, and the Buggy pirates egg on Nami to fire it on him. When she tries to worm her way out, we get what is probably Buggy's most intimidating panel, with this close-up of him looking down. Nami freezes up, and when one of the other crew members lights it for her, she attacks without thinking. She tries to defend herself, but has to stop to smother the flame, using her own hands in the heat of the moment, with Zoro coming in last minute to save Nami from the pirates. Zoro's reputation precedes him, as Buggy and his crew, as well as Nami, recognize him by name. Buggy at first believes Zoro is here to capture him, but when Zoro states he's retired from pirate hunting, Buggy's still quick to pick a fight. And we see why as Zoro slashes Buggy into pieces. Our three protagonists are all confused by the anticlimax, just as Zoro is stabbed by one of Buggy's hands. As we discover Buggy's devil fruit, being the Bara Bara no Mi, Bara being taken from the Japanese word meaning to be scattered or in pieces, typically localized as the chop chop fruit by most official sources. Not only can Buggy willingly detach his body parts as shown earlier, but can also move and reattach any limbs no matter how they're cut off, making him a natural counter to Zoro. The three manage to escape after Zoro turns the cannon facing Luffy onto Buggy's crew, which luckily doesn't take down the entire building given the size of the last explosion. In the smoke, Luffy introduces Nami to Zoro as their navigator, a label she's quick to deny. She also questions why Luffy isn't trying to escape. But you tied him up. How much are you expecting him to really do? With no key and no other choice, Zoro manages to pick up the cage with Luffy in it, despite the deep stab wound in his stomach. Even Luffy is worried about Zoro losing his guts from the pressure of picking it up. But Zoro refuses to listen and pushes through the pain to get the safety. He manages to carry Luffy all the way to another rooftop, where he finally gives himself a moment to rest. And Luffy appears to have wrangled himself out of the rope while being carried. When the dust settles, Buggy is left in a rage, sending out his first mate, Moji, and his line companion, Richie, to hunt down Roronoa Zoro. And Zoro isn't looking too well when we cut back to him and Luffy as he collapses on the ground, right next to a dog outside of an abandoned pet store. Shenanigans ensue, and Nami meets back up with the two, thanking them for helping her, and in exchange she's managed to steal the key to Luffy's cage, though clearly lamenting the map and treasure that she had to leave behind for it. But at least now they have the key. Oh dear. Thankfully, Luffy strangling the dog is stopped by an armored old man. But not just any armored old man. This poodle-haired fellow is the mayor of this abandoned village. Boodle. He gets Zoro a proper place to rest, and explains that he was here to make sure the dog, Shushu, was fed. As we get a bit of background on both it and the store, with Shushu having been the owner's pet. And since his passing, the dog has been watching after the store. Not just because it was the owner's last request, but according to the mayor, Shushu seems to recognize that the pet store was his owner's treasure, a big theme of this arc. But the sweet reminiscing is halted when the sounds of Moji's lion are heard. Nami and Boodle run off, leaving Luffy and Shushu alone with them. Though when they meet, Luffy can only focus on the hat, which we actually discover is his natural hair. So are the ears part of his hair? I have to assume so given this SBS answer, but does he hear from both sets of ears? If not, which ones does he hear from? His bare ears grow out with his hair becoming more rabbit-like, so does his hearing get better when his hair is grown out? Does he have to cut off parts of his ears that have grown out too much? These are the important questions. Aside from potential superhearing and or mutilation, Moji attacks Luffy, both freeing him and swatting him through a building, leaving Shushu alone to defend the shop. And the fight goes about as well as you'd expect a fight between a house dog and a lion would go. And the chapter does a good job in building sympathy, as Shushu is brutalized to flashbacks of him and his owner throughout the years owning the shop. Luffy returns just in time to see Mochi as set the shop on fire. An oddly well contained fire, considering the materials of most of the buildings and the size of the raging inferno. Luffy calmly faces off against Moji and Richie, now with much more ease being freed from the cage, and takes down Richie by slamming him down so hard his head is buried in the dirt. Moji begins begging for mercy, but Luffy has no understanding of the concept, pulling the lion tamer into his punch. Nami and Boodle look on to the burnt down shop as Luffy returns, setting the bag of food Moji stole before burning the store beside Choo-Choo, stopping Nami mid-tirade as she sees that Luffy did that purely for the dog's sake. And Luffy can also just talk to animals. Typical shonen main character tropes or fifth-dimensional foreshadowing. You decide. The former, it's probably the former. When Moji returns, Buggy and his crew are shocked to learn that he lost to the kid in the straw hat instead of Zoro. But Moji passes out before he can warn them about anything. And while usually puns have a difficulty landing when being localized, the localizers turning Buggy into thinking Moji was taken out by a masseuse because he can only get the rub part of rubber out before fainting is pretty funny. As the Buggy crew prepare to launch another Buggy Ball, we get a brief look at the evacuated villagers as Shushu makes it to the refuge. With the damage on Shushu visible, the villagers begin to worry about the mayor, who, after seeing Luffy fight for Shushu, is inspired to face the Buggy pirates straight on. Emboldened by both Luffy's encouragement and Buggy's next attack wiping out another portion of the town and waking up Zoro, Boodle runs off to fight the pirates. Nami is certain he's going to get himself killed, but Luffy is determined to protect him. Luffy once again offers Nami to join, to which she agrees to a temporary alliance. Boodle challenges Buggy to a fight. It's a brave and noble act, but predictably leads to him being laughed at, threatened, and choked when Buggy shoots out his hand at him. Right as he's about to pass out, Luffy saves the mayor, and then concusses him to keep him out of danger. Luffy insults Buggy's nose, a Buggy Ball is fired, and then deflected with the first Gum Gum balloon in the series. The building is demolished, and I maybe have to take back my assertion of the Buggy Balls being super powerful, since it seems like most of Buggy's crew are still alive and okay after the blast, or how the explosion can just be blocked with two bodies, or in Kabaji's case, a lion. Kabaji is the second mate of the crew who was threatening Boodle earlier. Well, actually, depending on the translator, he's either the second mate or the chief of staff, whatever that means in this crew. Moji is absolutely distraught to see his lion used as a human shield, which is ironic considering what he was willing to do to a much smaller animal. But Moji is quickly thrown away by Buggy for failing to warn them about Luffy's powers. Kabaji then goes for the attack, only to be stopped by Zoro. The two fight, with Kabaji taking advantage of Zoro's injuries. But after some time, Zoro begins to keep up, even injuring himself to give Kabaji more of a handicap. While this goes on, we get to see one of Nami's key traits in the saga, sneaking off while everyone's distracted to steal treasure. The fight goes on for most of the following chapter, mostly consisting of Zoro doing what I believe the kids call aura farming. He even gets a "I'm so tired of you" bit before finishing him off with an onigiri, the first proper one we see in the series. I mean, maybe the attack against Morgan was one, but he never called it, so I don't think it counts. By shonen logic, it doesn't count unless you say the name. There's a moment when Buggy tries to sneak attack Zoro, only to be stopped by Luffy stomping on his hand, signifying that Buggy can also feel the body parts that he detaches. As Luffy and Buggy stare each other down, Buggy remarks how much Luffy reminds him of a certain red-haired someone. He tries to play coy when Luffy wants to know more, but that really just confuses Luffy. It's hard to mind game the mindless after all. Unlike the fight between Zoro and Kabaji, this one is much more interesting, as we get our first fight between two Devil Fruit users, with the two feeling each other out, each unique move a response to the last. Luffy only begins to lose his cool once Buggy nicks the straw hat given by Shanks, further enraging him when Buggy stabs right through it with 3 daggers. Luffy, clearly taking after Nami revealing stuff in a rage, reveals his promise to return that hat to Shanks, making Buggy even more emboldened as he spits on the hat, which only leads to Luffy pummeling him when Buggy reveals that he and Shanks were part of the same pirate crew long ago. Luffy refuses to believe it, but Buggy insists, stating that Shanks was the reason he lost a treasure long ago. We flash back to Buggy and Shanks as young apprentices on an unspecified pirate crew that I'm sure isn't significant at all, fighting with each other whether the North or South Pole is colder, only to be stopped by this distinctively fork-bearded man, straightening them out. We see the pirates engage in combat. In the chaos, Buggy discovers a treasure map, keeping it for himself. And later that night during celebrations, Shanks and Buggy have a chat. The crew are happy with the spoils, with one particular item being a devil fruit. Buggy's dismissive of the fruit, but upon discovering how much it'd be worth to sell, the next day Buggy makes a big show to eat the devil fruit, secretly switching it to hold on to the real one, which he plans to take along with his treasure map out to sea, leaving the ship he's a part of. And then Shanks surprises him. Phew, that was close. Oh, never mind. In the shock of eating the devil fruit, Buggy drops his map into the sea, and when he goes to retrieve it, he learns that he can no longer swim. The crew are shocked, but why? They saw him eat the fake devil fruit, yeah, and it didn't look like it had any effect. But at least you'd expect some of them to realize that maybe the curse part of the fruit may be true when the apprentice known for being a good swimmer is suddenly drowning. Shanks dives into the water to save Buggy, but all Buggy seems to care about now is the treasure map that he lost and his plans ruined. Buggy raises into the air, showing his ability to hover and fly when detached from his feet on the ground. He makes a grand pose to Luffy, and then fakes him out as he dives for Nami trying to sneak off with his treasure. And then we get this. I don't think I have any words. The paneling. The complete lack of background making the clash the sole focus. It is perfect. Peak comedy. Buggy has one last trick up his sleeve as he bursts into pieces using Bara Bara Festival. But it's not too much more effective, as Luffy just focuses on a different part of his body, tickling and stubbing his foot. Nami goes for a swing with the bag of treasure, only for Buggy to catch it. And when he's about to stab Nami, Luffy jumps in, kicking his head, knocking Buggy down long enough for Nami to tie up his torso and limbs, leaving him as just hands, feet, and a head. And Luffy launches him into the horizon with a Gum Gum Bazooka. Once the battle is finished, Luffy is disappointed by the damage to his hat, but is still happy to wear it anyway, as Nami finally realizes that Luffy's value in that hat is purely sentimental. They regroup with Zoro as the townsfolk arrive to the scene, since a few chapters earlier they had agreed to go out to try to fight the Buggy Pirates, but have only now got there. And due to the blend of confusion and Luffy's honesty about knocking out the mayor, the three are chased out of town, only for the crowd to be stopped by Shushu protecting them as they run down an alley. The three pirates that had guided Zoro are found still waiting on the boat, but their threats are short-lived when they realize who they're threatening. Before our protagonists leave, Boodle manages to wake up fast enough to give them a proper goodbye as they sail off, oddly making Buggy's flag the first Jolly Roger Luffy sails under. Well, sails beside. We discover, much to Nami's annoyance, Luffy left the half of the money she gave him to the town so they could rebuild. And while she seems pretty pissed, she's just as quick to let it go, as they all laugh into the horizon. For our second story arc, Orangetown spotlights the theme of treasure, a consistent theme for the whole series. Of course there is the monetary kind, the kind that the Buggy Pirates plunder from, and also Nami partially, but there is also the things we put value onto. Whether it's the homes in Boodle's village, whose destruction motivates him, the singular shop that Shushu defends with his life, or something minuscule as a hat given by a close friend. For introductions, this is Nami's first proper appearance in the story, though she did actually appear on the cover of the very first chapter alongside Luffy and the red-haired pirates. In the story, she fills a similar role that Kobe had left behind, being the surrogate for the average person seeing Luffy's powers. But while Kobe was much more meek in the first arc, Nami is far more standoffish and headstrong, with her only big moment of hesitation being when she's pressured into killing a defenseless person. Though, honestly, given the still conscious members of Buggy's crew just a few minutes after the explosion, I think there's a decent chance Luffy could have survived that, but I digress. Nami is a good foil for both Luffy and Zoro. Much more sensible and human, but a lot more greedy and less inherently trusting, with this arc presenting that contrast on full display, showing Nami's reactions to Luffy's selflessness and kindness. She also displays a trait much needed on this team: cunning. Nami's a much more believable liar, able to weasel her way into the Buggy Pirates, and her ability to sneak off and quickly think on her feet definitely gives her a lot more of a crafty edge than the other two main characters we've met so far. Nami is the brains of the group, and her role as navigator makes her one of the most integral in the series. Because, let's be honest, without her, these people would be dead. Luffy takes a much more reactionary role this arc, a lot of his actions being done in response or to defend someone else. He defends his treasure from the three pirates at the start, fights Moji to get back for Shushu, and saves the mayor after he tries to fight Buggy himself. And this is done to solidify how Luffy differs from most other pirates. There's a running joke in the community that you can just feed Luffy a chicken sandwich and he'd overthrow your local government, but I honestly don't think you even need that half the time. As long as Luffy likes you, he will stand up and fight for your dreams if he sees how much they matter to you. Zoro plays a much less prominent role of this arc, mainly being here for the action. And since this is an action-adventure manga, I do suppose it's important to give Zoro a bit more action when he spent most of the last arc starving, though this time now his handicap is the wound given by Buggy, giving us a good look at just how blasé he is for his own self-preservation when it comes to protecting others. I just wish the combat between Zoro and Kabaji was just a little more interesting. It's not bad, there just isn't much to analyze here in terms of story. For the heart of our story, we have both Shushu and Mayor Boodle as peeks into the lives of the people here. It helps give a sense of context to this place outside of being a battleground for these pirates to fight in. These are people's homes, communities, and livelihoods. Boodle's conviction for his own town is palpable, and the townsfolk coming to aid after only Shushu returns is heartwarming, even if they missed a bit of the context. And of course, there's Shushu himself, an example of how One Piece is willing to focus on even the smallest part of a whole town and show why they're worth fighting for. I kind of forgot how beaten up he gets. Like, I'm glad he got the food, but someone give him medical attention, please. It's like if Morgan went over and just began punching Rika into a pulp. Actually, there's a good chance he would have done that, thinking about it. Shushu is also just fantastically characterized. Honestly, even with the literal clown as the main villain, I think Shushu got the most laughs out of me this read-through. Pirates take the spotlight this arc, as the Buggy Pirates fill the role of antagonists. While before we saw how unpleasant and terrifying it could be to work under a more violent pirate crew, here we really get a good sense on how destructive pirates can be on everyday people, as buildings are blown up, burned down, and raided. As for the Buggy Pirates themselves, Moji and Kabaji are the two henchmen of this arc, and between the two, Moji is definitely the more memorable, with his lion tamer role, more unique design, and better comedic moments. Him also being the one to beat up Shushu and burn the store makes his defeat much more satisfying. But of course, the main star of this circus is Buggy, our first antagonist who's a devil fruit user, which makes for a much more visually interesting fight, and shows how different two devil fruit powers can really be from one another. He shares that same ego as Morgan, but is much more chaotic with his methods, and his more comedic edge helps him stand out from most of the other main villains we'll get this saga. While the relationship between Buggy and Shanks will be elaborated more in later arcs, for this story, Buggy's whole motivation for disliking Shanks is that he lost his treasure because of him, tying him up with the arc's theme and making his conflict with Luffy work on a more personal level. Buggy would go on to play prominent roles throughout later arcs of the series, which is good, cause I don't think Orange Town is really his best material, only getting funnier and more compelling as he appears. And so ends our look into the Orange Town arc. Oddly a little less to say than the previous one, despite being nearly double the chapter length, taking into account Chapter 1's extended length. But I think that's more so the story letting itself breathe more compared to the first 7 chapters. That said, there are definitely bits that feel very clunky when reading. Something I think gets fixed when Oda begins getting enough characters to split the party, allowing him to focus on different aspects of a location simultaneously without Luffy needing to be in each scene. As it is, it's an alright arc, but I don't think it quite meets the highs of those first opening chapters. So, that concludes my thoughts on the Orange Town arc. I hope to see you all soon next time where we end up taking a bit of a small detour for a chapter. See you guys then.